Peace, everyone. I hope you are doing brilliantly. And today I'm going to be talking about the legacy of trauma in light of Palestine.
From beautiful seas to flourishing legacies.
Now, I just want to let you know that I'm going to be reading something that I wrote previously. I am, before a speaker, I am a writer. So I wrote this for an article that I was going to share with an organization. And I decided not to share it because of the platform that it was going to be shared on. So I never shared this article with anybody. And I am sharing it with you today. And I hope that you benefit from it and gain value. And here it is. So I'll be speaking to you and I'll be reading it at the same time. Okay. So the title is A Legacy of Trauma. So there has been a conversation that has been gaining increased attention over the past few years, more so than usual. It revolves around the escalating condition known as narcissism. You might be familiar with it. The defining trait of a narcissist is their heightened ego, which is a self-defense mechanism developed in response to childhood abuse. Some say that it might not have been as well. There's a difference of opinion. But the thing which is the same all around is that heightened and bloated and unhealthy sense of ego. So the underlying cause that propels individuals afflicted by and embracing this condition as the identity of narcissism is shame, right? These people are mainly shame driven. Another theory in trauma is called reenactment. And this explains how individuals unconsciously repeat situations which they have been in since they were children, and they keep repeating these past traumas, even in adulthood as well. And these events that they keep repeating resemble past traumas, or not of the events themselves, but how they were impacted by them. I hope I haven't lost you, right? So Peter Levine wrote a book. It's called Waking the Tiger, and he talks very deeply about this inside of this book. I would highly recommend for you to read this book, but it talks about this idea of reenactment, and he talks about this idea of subconscious reenactment, meaning that we are acting out behaviors of pain that we have been through and of trauma, and how we reacted to the trauma, and we are acting this out subconsciously. We are not even conscious of it, right? For instance, a person might have been raised in a very toxic environment. They might have grown up, and they might have grown out of this abusive environment. And what happens is they go into relationships which repeat the behavior that they are used to, right? It's a familiar behavior. They are in this, or they might marry someone who is abusive, then they divorce, and then they marry someone else who is abusive, and then they divorce, and it's just a repetition of just toxic relationships, toxic environments, toxic situations, and so on, right? And the cycle repeats. And with this foundation of narcissism and reenactment. So we've talked about narcissism, we've talked about reenactment, and this is where we're going to discuss Palestine, right? So imagine a nation of people who identify, I'm emphasizing the word identify, as the abused, oppressed, and the wronged. The land is repeatedly taken. Their children are killed by tyrants, and then Hitler arrives. A Holocaust ensues, and a world power steps in, offering what seems like a relief, a new land, a promised land, however, and saying that it belongs to them. However, it isn't yet theirs, as there are natives who are living on this land and have been living on that land for centuries. These natives become obstacles to the victims of ethnic cleansing. And now, here is the test. How will the victims treat those now who are in the same shoes as they were, metaphorically? Will they show mercy? Will they show dignity? Will they show integrity? And 75 years later, The land claimed as promised ground is stained with the blood of the natives. Homes are crumbled into rubbles, and a part of the land is enclosed with spiked gates. It is controlled by the victims who manipulate electricity, water, food. These are self-claimed victims. These victims have raised their guns, shooting at small Davids armed with slingshots against monstrous forces. Whether driven by the strength of resilience, small feats, resistance, or courage in the form of a small pebble, or simply desiring the land, the victims repeat and reenact the history of those who they identify with. Yet this time, they are no longer ever going to be victims again. And they are carried by an inflated sense of entitlement to this land. They will wipe out a whole nation of people who were there before them to get it, including men, including women, and including children. They portray themselves as good in the world, investing millions and even billions so people can see them in that way. You might argue that comparing a nation to an individual disorder like narcissism is a far stretch. However, are we not made of cells? Don't our cells carry the blueprint of our bodies? And don't our bodies form families? And don't our families form communities? And don't communities form nations? If there is a nation of self-entitled oppressors whose inflated sense of self, of ego, drives them to do anything to fulfill their desire, it would be the Zionist nation. The Zionists, the people who support Zionism. Ignorance amongst them is not justified. It does not excuse the killing of children or the act of genocide in 2023 and 2024, which is ongoing even until this day, where celebrities play heroes on screens talking about oppression, and yet when it is happening, they choose to remain silent. So what do we do? What do we do? The key is to wake up and to stay awake. While the narcissist feeds on its supply, another movement is underway, a movement of people waking up. Triggered by the blood of children, there has been an unburdening of their humanity. And the truth is shocking for those who have open hearts, unraveling the layers and the blinds of what we call in Islam the fitrah, which is the natural and the pure state of mankind and humankind. Israel is getting desperate. And as this truth manifests, people are seeing humanized grandfathers holding their dead granddaughters in their arms, seeing if they might just wake up any minute. People are realizing that those labeled as terrorists are actually humans, and they are questioning why are the victims smiling in their death. And the reason why is because they are awake, and we are all waking up. And I urge you to stay awake, to stay woke. Consider what you can do today to use your God-given gifts to serve the world in a way that it needs to be served. Whether that is through writing, speaking, drawing, coding, or any other means. And do not let the legacy of Israel's trauma have the last word.